Are you ready?
1G.
2 Gs if you count the initial one.
Okay, why don't we go live?
We're live.
All right, welcome everybody to House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. It is January 29th, and we are here with members of the Youth Climate Lobby for one of our annually anticipated days of youth advocacy in the State House. So we're always happy to welcome you guys to our committee room. We'll go around the room and introduce ourselves, everybody, and then we'll turn it over to our lead-off witness in the chair. So I'm Representative Kathleen James from Manchester.
Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor, Bennington. Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Era Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Putner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
And sorry, our vice chair and ranking member are on their way. So in the room joining us.
Claire Palmer with the Valley Reporter. Mariah Hedi, and I am the adult advisor for this wonderful group of people, Morristown.
Oh.
Julia Wolf, and I go to Harwood, and I'm from Waterbury.
Awesome.
Jack Gledo, I work with the Vermont Natural Resources Council from Burlington.
Evelyn Seidner, also work with the Vermont Natural Resources Council and serve as an advisor to this wonderful group of students, and I live for
Great.
I'm Astrid Longstreth. I live in West Bolton and I go to FFU.
Awesome.
I'm Harmony Devo. I live in Warren and I go to Harwood.
Great. Now, just to make sure we don't run out of time, how many of you guys are going to give us comments today?
3.
3? Okay. And we've got about half an hour. Does that? Do we have more? Oh, we don't. We have a little bit more time than that. Okay. So we're not in a particular rush. Our next commitment is at 2. So, okie dokie. So for the record, if you could introduce yourself.
My name is Jane Schaefer. I'm a junior at Harwood Union High School and I live in Waitsfield. I'm a ski instructor at Sugarbush and want to protect our winters. I spend my summers by the Mad River and I'm tired of the droughts and floods, and I'm terrified of what is becoming of our country at the federal level. That is why I sit before you today. But if you were to ask any of the kids in this room, or truly any kid you come across, they would tell you their reasons for wanting to prevent climate change. It's our future that we're fighting for. I hope you've noticed us around the State House today in these black t-shirts, but as a formal introduction, we are Youth Lobby. Youth Lobby began with one simple question: what about us? In a civics class in 2015, a Harwood student learned about lobbyists. She learned that people who have more power and resources are able to spend money to hire professionals to lobby for them. The student raised her hand and asked, "Do the youth have lobbyists?" The answer was no. Thus began her civic action project. If students can form a group of very well-informed young people and are willing to organize and use their voices and ideas, they have just as much power as any adult. Flash forward more than a decade later, and here we are, still in the State House, still a group of dedicated young people. Youth Lobby was here when the Global Warming Solutions Act was written into law, and we came back again last year to make sure it stayed. On my very first lobby day, we squeezed 50 people into the Senate chamber and watched the first vote on the Climate Superfund. In the following weeks, we watched it make its way to becoming a bill. Every year since the group started, we've had semi-regular lobby days along with a rally for the climate towards the end of the legislative session. Last year, we changed that up, and instead of a big carnival on the front lawn, we had a record-breaking number of students march down Main Street and have a rally on the front steps. It followed with the dedicated few coming in and speaking with legislators. We're not here to disturb, simply to show up and be heard. We are constantly changing and shifting to work towards our climate goals, and we ask the same of you. That part has never changed. So please listen to us, work with us, ask us questions, because we are here to speak for all the youth of this state, and we are its future. Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we hear from all of you, and then we'll ask questions of all of you. Does that sound good?
Hi, again, my name is Astrid Longstreth. I live in West Bolton and I attend Mount Mansfield Union High School as a sophomore. One of the topics that the Youth Lobby has been focusing on recently is the Climate Superfund Act, as it faces lawsuits and pushback from our federal government and big oil corporations. That is why we are participating in the National Make Polluters Pay Week of Action, to make sure our state leaders know how important this law is to our future, Vermont's future, and to stand in solidarity with states across the country who are following in our footsteps by advancing climate superfund bills and working to hold big oil companies accountable for their damaging actions. I want to thank state lawmakers and leaders for not backing down the federal government and fossil fuel corporations. As youth in Vermont, the continued implementation of the Climate Superfund Act represents a step forward for protecting the future of the planet and the next generation. We will be the ones inheriting an Earth with a warming climate, with polluted air, and rising sea levels. But we should not have to be the ones to bear the responsibility for it. This is why the Climate Superfund Act is so important. It makes those who are truly at fault for the continued impacts of climate change be part of the solution. It seeks reparations for Vermonters who have already suffered so much at the hands of climate change. With the funds generated from compensation from fossil fuel companies, Vermont could better prepare for future impacts of climate change by investing in the infrastructure and efforts that will increase our climate resilience. At a time when federal action is moving against, rather than for climate advocacy, activism is more essential than ever. This is not a time to be idle, to wait for things to improve, because they won't unless we do something. The future is not something that is going to happen. It is something that we can shape and take action to protect while there's still time to do so. This must happen not just for Vermont, not just for youth, not just for people, but for the Earth itself. Taking steps forward to stop climate change will benefit everyone who calls the planet our home. The Climate Superfund is an extremely important policy. However, it cannot be implemented without sufficient funding, which is why I asked the legislature and governor to ensure that the Agency of Natural Resources receives enough funds to be able to implement it successfully. Additionally, I would like to thank all of the legislators who have fought to pass Vermont's current climate laws. These are essential in our journey to protecting the planet and stopping climate change, and more action must be taken in the future if we are to complete this journey. The Climate Action Plan is an important document, one that outlines many recommendations for future action to fight climate change and respond to its effects. One of these recommendations is on creating a greenhouse gas reporting requirement for the transportation and heating sectors. Currently, these two sectors contribute the largest percent of Vermont's greenhouse gas emissions, yet we have the least amount of data on them. Without the collection of further information on the transportation and heating sectors, we will not be able to successfully curb the emissions generated by them. This policy would provide information that can support better local and statewide planning, as well as future policies and regulations. Taking a step forward is essential in order for Vermont to significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions and cost in the transportation and thermal sectors. Thank you for your time and for your hard work again.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Harmony Bell Devo. I'm a member of Youth Lobby and the Vermont State Youth Council. I go to Harwood Union High School, and I live in Warren in Washington County. In July of 2023, I observed the violently rising Mad River as the water made its way up the riverbank and the rock barriers protecting our town from its currents. As the grass flooded, farmers lost topsoil and crops, homes' first floors were submerged, and businesses were ruined and forced to throw away thousands of dollars worth of goods. As a 14-year-old, when I should have been able to enjoy my summer outside, swimming in clear Vermont waters, I instead observed my town in a climate crisis, flooded with sediment-filled water. Vermont is not a safe exception when it comes to environmental disasters and the devastating effects of climate change. When we experienced similar floods in December of 2024, I had a similar sinking feeling as the rivers rose again. As my peers and I were bussed home early from school, missing education due to an unsafe outdoor environment to return home in, I realized the impact climate change has on Vermont is not just going to be a single storm, but a growing pattern of environmental disasters immensely worsened by the use of fossil fuels. Big oil companies contribute to climate change in Vermont by selling polluting and volatile fossil fuels that lead to climate impacts like the disastrous floods our state has experienced. pushing Vermont to hold these global producers financially responsible for their share of these costs. People often ask how much it will cost to combat climate change. The question that is as important to ask is, what is the cost of inaction? As a young person living in a state ranked nationally for having the highest natural disaster declarations makes me feel that I must navigate heightened anxiety, fear, and worry for my communities, and has caused me and other youth in our community to adopt premature resilience. It makes me disappointed in my leaders that haven't been able to combat the growing effects of climate change sooner, which we have been made aware of for decades now. The fact that Vermont is importing dirty and expensive fossil fuels that do not contribute to our state's environmental or economic well-being, and instead actually harm both, while renewable energy is a more affordable, clean option that supports Vermont economy by creating jobs and recirculating dollars in our economy, shows that there is an obvious opportunity placed before us to benefit our community, environment, and economy. Vermont ranks 4th in the country for per capita post-disaster federal assistance, and the county I live in, Washington County, had the highest number of disaster declarations in the state, 22 disasters. As a young person growing up among these climate disasters, this is frightening and disturbing. In 2023 alone, Vermont faced over $2 billion in climate disaster costs, while big oil companies like Shell and ExxonMobil reaped over $200 billion in profits. This is a reality that spurred our first in the nation Climate Superfund Act to make big oil pay and take responsibility for their impact on climate change in Vermont. These funds would go toward much needed investments in environmental resilience and adaptation strategies for our state, which would provide young people like me a feeling of confidence in the safety and well-being of our communities going forward, and would allow us to avoid high future cleanup costs that young people would otherwise be forced to pay for. The cost of doing nothing is too high. The legislature does not make big oil pay for the mess they've made. My generation will inherit these costs. We will be left with the bills for infrastructure that is washing away. How would you feel if, as a child, especially among the current state of our economy, you had the knowledge that when you grew up, you would be forced to pay for the repair of damage done by climate change caused by adults running these big oil companies looming over you? The Climate Superfund Act's polluter pays principle uses logic that we learn at a young age. If you make a mess, you clean up after yourself. You don't expect others to clean it up for you. It is unacceptable and unfair for Vermonters to be the ones paying for damages caused by companies that have known for decades about climate change and their contributions to it. It is extremely empowering to be listened to as a member of Youth Lobby in Vermont, the state leading the nation in climate action. It is heartening to see the Attorney General and Treasurer defending the Climate Superfund Act against lawsuits from the American Petroleum Institute. Your support for this act is crucial because it's the state's primary tool to make fossil fuel companies pay for climate damages like floods and fund essential adaptation projects, easing the financial burden on Vermonters, especially after recent severe disasters, and serves as a national model for holding polluters accountable. As a young person, I experienced persistent climate anxiety. When I stood in silence at a protest with my 4th grade class for 11 minutes in 2019, representing the 11 years we had left before the effects of climate change were irreversible, I felt overwhelmed with fear for the safety and well-being of our environment and communities. Now, seeing the possibility of big oil being held accountable for the harm and disaster their fossil fuels have caused our state gives me immense hope in the possibility of a future where people and the planet are delivered the environmental justice they deserve. I want to thank you for all the work you have done to protect our climate, and I urge you still to keep making progress for future generations of Vermonters. The Climate Action Plan outlines many top recommendations for how Vermont can keep improving our climate action and resilience. Creating a greenhouse gas reporting requirement for the transportation and heating sectors is one of those top recommendations. Right now, transportation and heating make up the largest share of Vermont's emissions, but we know the least about them, and they're the least regulated. You can't manage what you don't measure. This policy would serve as a foundational baseline of information to support better local, regional, and state planning, as well as potential future policy and regulatory approaches. It is essential to begin to significantly reduce climate pollution and costs in the fossil fuel intensive transportation and thermal sectors of our state. Other environmentally important laws to youth right now that I urge you to please protect are the Global Warming Solutions Act of 2020 and the Renewable Energy Standard of 2024. I want to thank the committee for all the work you have done and continue to do to pass laws that will protect my future. And I ask you to please stand strong and continue to fund the Climate Super Fund legislation passed in 2024 and the implementation of this very important law in order to defend the safety of our land, communities, and future generations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Well, I guess I can kick off the questions. I'd be curious to hear from each of you or anybody who wants to chime in. You don't have to, about how you first got involved in the youth lobby, and then maybe what work you're doing back home in your high school or in your community.
I first got started in the youth lobby in 9th grade. When I joined high school and I was just thinking about what kind of clubs I wanted to be in. I grew up attending a lot of climate protests in Boston, where I was raised. And I saw it as a club that really allowed me to reach my legislators and the people who are in power that are making policies that are going to drastically impact my future. And yeah, I joined the club and then we started coming to our lobby days at the State House, and I've been part of it ever since.
Awesome. Other folks?
I go to school with Harmony. We're the same age. We started about the same time. I did in middle school, I did a club called Cultivating Pathways to Sustainability. And I would go to elementary schools and read books by BIPOC authors. And it was such a little change, but it just felt so empowering that I was like, I have to keep doing this. And so I joined Youth Lobby, and my very first meeting, there were 2 seniors who had been involved their whole high school career, just getting in like pretty heated argument. And this sounds ridiculous, but I was so inspired that they were like so into it that they were willing to like fight with their best friend to kind of make effective change.
Well, in 7th grade, I joined the Vermont State Youth Council. And so I kind of just heard about Youth Lobby through that because, well, Harmony, you're also on the State Youth Council and you do Youth Lobby. So that was one connection. And just, I think we have a lot of the same interests. And I was on the climate committee at the State Youth Council. And since Youth Lobby has been focused a lot on the climate, I just heard about it through that. And when my term ended on the State Youth Council, I decided I wanted to join Youth Lobby as another way to have my voice heard.
I started out in middle school, not as a part of Youth Lobby, but like occasionally attending Youth Lobby events. And I also worked a lot. We had a really good sustainability program at my middle school, and that was one of my favorite classes. I did a lot of projects in that class, obviously relating to sustainability. And so then in high school, I pretty promptly joined the sustainability club there. And I was surrounded by Jane and Harmony and other people who were on Youth Lobby. And for a while, I was a bit confused on how to join or just not sure the step to take, but I did eventually talk to them, and now I'm part of Youth Lobby.
Great.
I'm not with Youth Lobby. I intern at a newspaper.
Oh, that's right. Sorry about that. You said that.
But
Apologies.
Okay.
I've got one more question that I'm sure folks around the table have other questions. I was curious to know, I know you guys are, young and everybody hates this question, but I would be curious to know if any of you have future careers in mind. Like, what do you see yourself doing? Are you going to try to enter the field or?
I hope to be a civil rights lawyer with the ACLU.
I want to be a speech pathologist, which kind of has nothing to do with this, but every time I'm here, I just feel such a draw to it that I don't know. We'll see.
It's a great career.
I don't know. I have a lot of things I want to do. I mean, I'm really interested in journalism and a lot of science fields, but also politics and also being a lawyer. I don't know. There's a lot of things that I can't decide.
So mine is very unrelated. I plan on going into performing arts. I don't plan on stopping this. Obviously, it's super important to me as a human being who exists and on this planet. So I plan on continuing researching and like advocating for these policies. But yeah, I'm planning on going into performing arts.
Cool. Rep.
I
Klettner?
think that's a impressively precise career goals.
I know.
Kids who are in high school.
So I apologize very much for being late. Laura Sibilia from Wyndham 2. And I just want to applaud you all for coming here and really stress to you that it is so important. Your voices here. Democracy requires participation. And the changing climate is, it's really, you all are growing up and living in a different time than a lot of other folks, and your voices are so critical. Change of the scale that is required to address climate change is very hard. And you all speaking about the right that you have for a future and insisting on your right to participate in this conversation. I just applaud you and encourage you, even when you are frustrated and upset, remember we have a democracy and you have to keep engaging. You have to keep engaging. So thank you so much for coming today. And I would love to support you continuing to engage in any way possible. So thank you, Chair.
Do we have other questions for our guests? Yeah.
Curious if you guys just focused on Vermont, or do you tap into like national organizations working on climate change?
I guess so far we've just been focused on state policies.
Yeah, that's good.
Do you have any suggestions of national organizations that we could
there's a couple that were started here in Vermont that you might tap into. Like, get familiar with Bill McKibben's work. Yeah, so if you start there, there's lots of different good ones. Yeah,
I can sort of speak to it a little bit in terms of, because one of my roles is to help youth lobby once they decide what they want to work on, find good partner organizations who are doing the work, so that way they can decide what they want to help leverage. And so part of that is figuring out who good partners are for youth, which is in an open way that that their voices can be heard. So so 350 is part of the Act on Climate. Folks who are good partners and support youth lobby when they're doing climate work. At the universities. But sort of, so there is that tie-in. Depending on what people wants to do.
And we also, I mean, this is still very Vermont centered, but Julia and I ran a youth lobby table for the No Kings event a few months ago. So we're definitely from our own little corner here, kind of trying to reach out for national level.
You can tell your parents to join Third Act Vermont.
Parents are still too young.
I know. You know what? You know what's really funny? As I was doing that math, I thought,
No.
actually not. Yes, your parents are still too young. Oh well. Rep Tori.
I just, part of why I love doing this work now is because when I was your age, there was greenhouse gas, global warming. It was known, but yet it was not something we talked about ever in high school. Like, it just wasn't on the radar at all. And it took a long time for me to really become educated about the scale of the crisis and become active. And it's kind of a regret that it took that long. And so, I mean, I feel terrible that you are having to experience it at your age and ask that question, why did it take me so long? And so much of it was about, distraction and disinformation. And I think you guys are fighting that hard. You have good access to information now, and you have good tools. You're also articulate. And I see you in action at Harwood in terms of how you learn, talk about difficult things, your facilitation skills, your ability to present, on any topic. It's impressive. And I feel like if any generation is empowered and skilled up for the fight, it's yours. And I'm very grateful for the school system that has created a lot of opportunity, and to your parents and your communities that you've been nurtured in, because it's it's really clear where we are now, and it's really clear that the climate crisis is going to be a democracy crisis. And we are living it hard. And we were going to do our best in this room and welcome you here, and look forward to being partners. Thank you.
What do you guys each done in your personal lives to move the clean energy transition forward?
Oh, that's a good one.
I would say in my life, I grow a garden. I only buy secondhand. I turn the lights off.
That's all awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Pretty similar to Harmony. I have a 20-plus-year-old car, so definitely not doing great on that front right now. But definitely buying secondhand. We have a garden. Spending a lot of time outside, so driving around.
Well, a lot of these things have mostly been because of my dad, because he's very interested in all this too. But we have solar and drive electric cars and compost, and yeah, my whole family's very cautious about turning off lights too. And yeah, I don't buy very many. I mostly thrift when I can, and I'm vegetarian, mostly for the environment. I don't like meat when I eat it, but I decided I felt better, happier being vegetarian. So, yeah.
It's great.
My family, we compost. We have a garden. I personally make a point to, shop sustainably, especially like with clothing and like fast fashion. As well as making a point to not use AI, because it can be so detrimental, especially when you use it every day. So I've been trying to do that as well.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, that's all great. And I mean, there's a lot you can do. Vegetarian's great. I'm with you. Although I do have to say, the other week when I got a breakfast sandwich at the bagel bakery and the kids screwed up and put bacon on it, it was the best day of the week. But Burlington Electric believed my home in Burlington was the first historic structure to get to zero emissions, and we've only had electric cars for a while. So there's things big and small, composting and all of that. All that stuff's great. It's a 20-year-old car, better than buying a new one every 3 years in terms of the total carbon footprint. So there's that. These are difficult times, and you guys, you're all living it, right? Like the stress of being young at a time when our democracy is under attack from every direction and our global climate is in trouble. It's going to take a lot of courage. And one of the sad lessons of this administration is how fragile democracy is, right? That 200 years buys you nothing. One guy can screw it up in 3 months. But that also means an equally small number of people can fix it. It only takes a few hundred people in positions of power to protect an entire democracy. So, there's there's hope there, and I will share to try to help counter the despair that is so easy to feel these days. I will share one of the things that keeps me hopeful. I had this great idea. I heard that the Sahara Desert has gone back and forth between being forested and desert like every 5,000 years. So I had this great idea. I called up McKibben and I'm like, dude, let's reforest the Sahara. It's going to be awesome. Like, we'll put nuclear fusion plants along the North Coast. We'll desalinate water from the Mediterranean. We'll irrigate it. We'll grow this forest. It'll absorb all this carbon. It'll be awesome. And
I sense a short form bill.
it is. Yeah, like I'm like, who's good at this? I was all excited. And he writes back, it's like, it's not quite that simple and he explains to me that the fact that the Sahara is now sand, the winds bring a lot of it up into the air and filter the sunlight hitting the Atlantic and keep the Atlantic cooler. So if you reforest it, the Atlantic gets quite a bit warmer and the east coast of the US gets hammered with monster storms. Like, dang, unintended consequences everywhere you look. But there is, and I apologize to my colleagues who are tired of hearing me get all excited about this. I'm talking, yeah. That was pretty but fair.
I feel my own. I don't know. I feel your own.
Yeah. There's a lot of progress on new 100% clean and safe nuclear technology, nuclear fusion. There's a plant being built right now that brings with it the promise of clean, non-carbon, no radioactive waste, affordable energy. And if that happens in the next 5 years, it will make a meaningful difference in our chances of getting the planet into a more stable climate position that will avoid the misery that will come from continued climate instability.
I'm wondering if the waste isn't radioactive, does that mean if it does accidentally spill, it'll be okay for the environment and the surrounding people?
Yeah, so the technology, fusion technology, the current nuclear reactors take big unstable atoms of uranium and split them in two. That releases a lot of energy, and you have two slightly smaller unstable atoms, which are radioactive waste. Fusion takes two hydrogen atoms and sticks them together, which counterintuitively also produces a great deal of energy. And the only byproduct is helium, which you can actually then burn for more energy, and all that produces is water. So it's clean all the way through. There's no chance of a meltdown or any of that stuff. It's very complicated technically. You need very high temperature and very high pressure, and they've been working on it for like 70 years. But as I said, the first commercial fusion plant is under construction in Everett, Washington right now. They're building a plant to supply Microsoft with like 50 megs of power, and if it works, I hate to rely on a tech fix. Like, it would be nice if humans could just behave properly, but I'm afraid many millennia of human history have proven you cannot count on humans to behave properly. So a tech fix is infinitely better than no fix.
Thank you. Guys, another heat. Was there another question?
I was going to ask the same thing as Harmony about the nuclear or the non-radioactive waste.
Yep.
I have a question for you guys. Do you have peer support networks in your schools?
Can you define that, please?
Where you kind of have, it's like, because of the level of stress and things like that, it's an opportunity to help, be there for people more informally. And I thought I read something recently. But maybe, doesn't sound familiar at home. Not sure.
It's a good idea. It's good to have people where when you're just feeling completely crushed by the world, where you can go and say, hey, I just need to sit in the room with you, and you need to hold my hand while I cry for 5 minutes, right? Like, it is good to have those release valves. It's important for all of our health.
It's Mental Health Advocacy Day. So, and youth lobby. But when you walk by the table out there, if you haven't checked it out, they have these short little mental health cards, just in case you ever do come upon someone who's having a crisis. Like, did you guys like? I got it.
All right, do we have more questions?
Unsurprisingly, I have more to say.
Yeah.
Wow. One of the things,
Do we have,
a lot of folks come in with climate anxiety, and that's why what youth lobby does.
yeah,
Takes that anxiety and turns it to
Turns it
action,
to
and
action.
an antidote.
yeah.
And
Right.
so, so that's like what our meeting talking about. So there is something.
Yeah, there's
Mhm.
power there for sure.
Do we have any more questions for the leaders of today?
I'll say one more short thing. Very short.
Is it a question from kids or just a comment?
I just want to comment on something that James said,
Yes.
which is you said, we're not here to disturb, but I would say if someone is sleepwalking towards a cliff, it is your duty to disturb them.
1000%. In a democracy, that's what you think is happening. So. Peacefully.
Great. Super. Does anybody else have any questions for our students? I am really glad you're here. It's always great to see you. I look forward to this day every year. Are you going to come to Florida today? Or do you have to take
I
off?
don't think we're planning.
Yeah, not today.
Okay. Well, please stay in touch. Thanks again. Did you submit your, I didn't see your testimony ahead of time. Did you email it or could you email it? We'll post it.
It should be, the committee assistant should have it. It's
Oh,
up there.
great. It's already up.
Great.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for being here, everybody. And we are back at 2, right? Yes, we are back at 2. So we can go offline. And thanks again for all your work and for being here in the State House.